Hello, this is a tutorial where I try to create an application that's similar to the main page of Winamp, so a music player using QtMultimedia and QML. We're on a Linux Ubuntu 26.04 computer. We have enough Qt libraries and modules available on the computer. We have the correct C++ toolchain, and I'm going to use copious amounts of help from an LLM. This is how the Winamp main window looks like. It doesn't contain a playlist, it just knows about the current audio file. It computes the title of the audio file to display. It might be inside the file name itself, it might be inside metadata. For instance, inside MP3 files, you might have things like ID3 tags. And then it knows how long the audio file is, so in minutes, and then the number of minutes remaining. You can seek, and there's the common playback buttons, play, pause, stop, next, and previous inside a playlist. I have this idea from an actual in-car, so an automotive display for a audio player, and I want to have something very similar replicated using QML. So we don't display a list of audio files, we don't have a playlist window, we have just the main window that's displayed, in my case, in the car infotainment system, and in the case of Winamp, in the main window of Winamp. So as a reminder, Winamp had three windows out of the box. There was the main one, which is on the top in this case, then there was the equalizer, and then the playlist. So the main one was called Winamp, the second Winamp equalizer, and the third Winamp playlist. And we're going to structure the application and start with such a structure where we're going to have two different processes. One is going to be handling the audio output. That one will be named audio Q and with a D at the end. And the other one is going to be called just audio Q. So audio and then Q for Qt or QML. This is the GUI part, the front end, and then this is the back end, the actual thing that outputs audio through the speakers. The two will communicate via plain text files. We'll start by using this directory for the commands, ~music/commands. Commands are files which are sorted by modify time ascending, and the contents is what you would expect. If you want to play, you're going to say play and then the name of the file. If you want to pause, there will be a second command in here. The name of the files is not really relevant, and in here you're going to say pause. Trailing new lines are optional. So audio Q daemon, the D1, is going to keep looking at files in this directory ~music/commands, sort them ascending by mtime, fetch one of these files, execute it, and then delete it. And then audio Q will display the graphical user interface, so similar to the main window in Winamp, using QML, using C++, models, etc. And then when the user presses on the pause button in Winamp, which is this button, audio Q will write inside the directory ~music/commands, will create a new file with this content, just pause. And again, since I do know C++, but I do not know enough Qt, Qt Multimedia, Qt QML, etc., I'm going to get a ton of help from large language models. I have started creating a top-level readme.md file. So again, we have two directories, one for the backend part, the process with the D at the name, end of the name, and then audio queue, which will be the front end, the graphical user interface written in QML. Top-level readme.md files will have top-level readme files also inside the two subdirectories. And the LLM will need to read the readme.md file, so it's a good idea to for me to actually create this file instead of writing all of these pros into the initial prompt of the LLM, and then I'm not exactly sure how we create the readme.md file. So name of the application, a automotive-like infotainment music player without any playlist. So this application needs to be extremely bare bones because a driver doesn't really want to see a million characters written and touchable with the fingers, because maybe it's not as easy to read and maybe it becomes distractive for the driver of the car. So no equalizer shown by default, no playlist, just playback of the current file, and buttons for play, pause, next track, previous track. The driver actually does seek inside the audio files with the finger, using a touchscreen. So that's an important feature. And I talk about the separation between audio queue and audio QD. There's this intermediate tilde/music/commands directory. They are in there, there's just plain text files, one command per one file. Let's start the Visual Studio Code and the LLM inside and see if things work okay. Control backtick to start the terminal and start Cloud Code. For the LLM, we have two sets of instructions. There's the top-level readme.md file, and then we're going to have the first prompt. In the first prompt, we have information that's complementary, not part of the top-level readme.md file. We're telling the LLM that we are using a Linux computer. The source for the Qt dev packages and modules and header files, etc., is going to be /usr. We have installed Qt using apt-install commands from the Ubuntu 2604 dev package repositories. We will start with the command line up first, and then we will get the GUI up. So we tell it about the directory tilde/music/commands. But in order to enter a development loop where we modify a bit the source code, compile, and then we test, I don't want the current commands to get deleted each time we resume the loop. So for that, I'm going to take the two existing files and move them to another directory. This directory is just temporary. It's a debugger tool inside tilde/music/commands_bk. Whenever the command line application AudioQD starts, we'll take all of the files from here, put them in here. I'm not sure if the M time will be kept correctly, so that will be a problem. But at least playback of music should start immediately. Okay, and then we want the command line up to start at least by being able to list all of the files in this directory sorted ascending m time, so by modification time. And then for each of the files, I want the full path, I want the content written to standard output, and the file deleted. And the application will immediately exit. I didn't specify that I want this to be running in a loop. After we have an application that compiles and kind of runs, we're going to do the initial commit, git commit. Paste. Okay, needs permissions to reading from this directory, correct? What does it want to do? I'm not sure why you would look at the contents of the music directory. Okay. What does it want to do right now? It's looking at the contents of comments underscore bk files. There's 2 files in there. I'm not sure why it's important. They should, maybe because I didn't specify that the files are just plain text files. Uses qmake6 to find out if Qt6 is installed and where. Okay, the environment has Qt6, of course, CMake, yes, G++. Audio queue directory is empty. You mean the project's audio QD? What do you mean? Root/audio QD. Okay, let me create the app. I'll follow the root readme documentation for audio QD. Well, it guessed that it should put the files in the correct directory, which is audio QD started with the first file, the entry point, which is cmake lists.txt file, the entry point of the executable. Yes. Starts with cmake minimum required, which is correct. Then project name. Looks okay. Needs Qt6 and core. Main application. It does an out of tree build in the subdirectory build, which should be this directory. Yeah, so when you're programming using an LLM, you're waiting a ton for the LLM to do its job. But still we can look at the progress more in depth. While it's doing the next task, we can read what it did at the previous step. Permanent deletion, all worked. It's using G++ to build a test file. Set file time works, M times are correct. So it actually tested that a file with newer modified time will appear first. I don't want actually the oldest first. I don't want creation time ascending sorting, but I want modification time ascending sorting. It detected a file ordering bug. And I would want it to stop, not continue fixing bugs, because I didn't even do the initial git commit. At this point, I'll actually intervene and create the Git project. So let's do that. We should be in the audio queue directory, and we are. Git init dot git GUI. Okay, let's see what we have here. We have some files that should be ignored. The any build directory should be ignored. So let's fix that. Create a new file, git ignore with a dot at the start. Okay, and in here we should exclude all of the directories that are named build. Okay, we want the top level .gitignore file, the top level readme.md file, the cmakeLists.txt file inside audioqd. So it creates a command line application, only depends on Qt core because we're just listing files and writing to standard output, sorting files. So that should be enough. The core module from Qt 6. Let's see what it does. So there's a backup directory, a commands directory. It ignores files that end with a backslash because with tilde, because this might be files that are not completely written and flushed to disk, so intermediate files created by the front end. Okay, restore commands from backup the way I asked. We'll see how we keep the original m times from the backup directory. Consume one command. Wow, one file. Cool. How does it consume it? Writes to standard output path and then new line, content and then new line. But with this bug fix, don't put new lines twice. Knows how to actually write to standard output, not to just a buffer. And then it's deleting the file. Okay. The main entry point to the executable, a QCore application, and then prepare for debugging with copying files from the backup to the commands directory, and then the main loop. Okay, everything looks as it should be. Initial commit. Let's look at the history. We're on the Git master branch. Everything looks okay. And we'll continue answering the questions from the LLM. So it created files with tilde at the end. It wants to create a readme.md file. It just duplicated everything that's already written in tilde/readme in the top level readme file. Yeah, it didn't talk about the _bk file. I don't really like when the LLM creates a ton of documentation for itself because it gets stale really, really fast. I would rather it create executable files and source code file. Like instead of saying how to run the application, I would prefer to create a run.sh file. Instead of saying how to build the application, I would rather have it create a build.sh file. Okay, let's accept it this time, but we're going to eventually trim the file because it gets out of date fast. Okay. So we'll need these quality of life improvement things. So we want inside the audio QD directory create build. What types of build should we do? Create a rebuild.sh, incremental build.sh, and run.sh bash scripts. Let's see if it guesses what I wanted to put in there. Rebuild.sh, so it saw that I did a typo. I put two e's instead of one, so it created the correct file name, rebuild.sh. What does it do? It deletes recursively the directory build, so for a CMake out of 3 build, which is correct, what I would have expected. And then it builds everything, so CMake configure step and then CMake build step. Okay. Unfortunately, when I click inside the Visual Studio Code terminal, it accepts the first option. Let me see what it did. So I saw this one, exec build, and incremental build just doesn't delete the, okay. Use the CMake build configuration bug always. Okay, so not rel release, not rel with debinfo, but actual debug. We're not prepared to release this software yet. Okay, so it created the 3 bash files. Incremental build does not delete the build directory. Rebuild deletes the build directory. Run does this fancy thing where I can put additional command line parameters to run.sh in here, which is okay. Audio QD, add sh files. Okay, let's prove that everything worked. I'm not sure how we can prove that. Let's have a second terminal. And then how do we do it? Dot slash audio QD and then run.sh. Okay, I really need to tell it to keep the M type. When copying files from backup directory, make sure the m time and c time are kept. Okay, and here we get to learn about the Linux operating system. So I'm not sure what it says in here is correct or not. I guess that you can set the creation time of a file, but it says that not really. It's kernel space thing. So I should have only asked to keep the m time, modify time, not the c time. A time, access time, m time, cp minus p behavior. Yeah. I don't really like it when the LLMs actual document what they did, because that documentation becomes stale immediately, especially when the documentation is created as a docstring on top of a method, like it's in this case for the free function restore commands from backup. It put as doc strings, documentation strings, something that has nothing to do with the purpose of the method, so it's extremely fine details. It's data, not information, and it's going to change in a couple of Git commits. Do you want to proceed? So how do I proceed? I have no clue how to enter the Visual Studio Code terminal without actually triggering the Do you want to proceed? No. Okay, so what I want to do, tailed comments. I'm not exactly sure how to convey this message, but I don't want it to explain what instructions I can already see. So I understand the C++ programming language. Don't tell me that a loop is going to follow. Don't tell me that the loop does two things. I can actually read C++ source code. But if there's a very important thing that we should keep, in our minds, maybe you can add something at the end of a line. So keep the C++ source code line and then go // and then something extra short but very important. Like in here we are fixing a very important bug, or so a bit of instructions such that the next developer doesn't actually delete a source code line that's actually a bug fix. That makes sense. But then babysitting and telling me how to read the source code that's going to follow the comments, that I totally don't want, because again, the comments are going to bit rot immediately and are going to explain something that happened 5 commits ago. But nowadays, the C++ source code that follows that comment is totally different from the comment. Something happened in here. It edited the files automatically. I would expect it to wait for me to say, do whatever you were already doing, but consider my newest prompt. Whereas it went immediately, edited the file, and it didn't ask for confirmation about that. So I'm not sure, maybe I have commuted plot code into a no prompt mode or something. Okay, so there were build errors. How do we see that? Last read versus last accessed. Last read. Okay, let's look at the differences. So I don't want seed time and stuff like that. Don't babysit me. Wow, a ton of doc strings were removed, correct? That's a good way to do it. Okay, so most of the changes here are the removal of doc strings and comments. So I'm not really sure what it actually did. Probably this one to keep the file access time when it sets time. Okay, I trust that it did what it should. So where, and then what, keep a time. I didn't ask for that, but this is a feature that we just got. Okay, and we can prove again that everything worked, hopefully. And at this point, we could maybe enter with the debugger at least once, just to make sure that everything looks okay, because this is the foundation from which we will actually start everything. And for debugger, I would load this cmake list.txt, whatever the generated cmake cache.txt file inside the integrated development environment Qt Creator, and then use the debugger there. Okay, at this point, I actually wanted to play music. Okay. Audio QD instead of writing to std out it should actually use Qt Multimedia to play back the entire audio only file. So it shouldn't do a video playback or something else. I have seen that one of the MP3 files actually has a JPEG inside, maybe inside the metadata for probably cover image. So I don't want anything visual, just audio. Okay, so it acted without me approving anything. It has edited the cmake list.txt file. It has added the additional Qt 6 module multimedia. So core was already used, and now it's already also using multimedia. It has added to the only C++ CPP file the include QMedia player. Include. And there's an additional top level method that, or a top level function, a function that knows about the content inside the file and looks for play space and then computes the URL with double quotes. There's a pause and there's a G underscore player, whatever that is. So it's using, instead of creating a class with the QMedia player being a member variable, it actually is using global variables in here, which I totally do not like. Okay, so top level Q audio output, Q media player. But I wouldn't actually know how to structure this source code by classes. So probably there's a class per one file, so to handle one file. And then one class to handle the contents of a file, something like that. So whatever is presented right now as top-level free functions should become hopefully short classes. Poll commands. I'm not sure how it's looking at the contents of the directory. Inside the readme.md file, I have concrete instructions where I say that it's an endless loop. It should keep looking inside the commands directory to see if new files appear and serve those, whatever, execute those if they appear. But then I did not give the go-ahead to implement such a feature. So it might, the LLM might implement the feature even if I didn't put the features inside the prompt of the LLM yet, but they're available inside the readme, and I did say that it should read the readme file. Okay, I want to allow multimedia access. What do you mean by multimedia access? Okay, and now I want to instruct it to stop writing to files. Audio sync for QtMultimedia is available. QtMultimedia is using FFmpeg as the backend. It keeps adding things that I don't really like to readme.md files. Okay. Accept edits on, Shift Tab to cycle, but I totally did not click here. How did this get applied? So Shift Tab, manual mode on. Okay. Even if load has changed from manual mode, please ask me every time you want to write to this directory. I'm not sure if so I'm talking to the LLM to tell Claude to not do things, which is not possible, right? Wow. So it promises that from now on, it will wait for me to confirm. Okay, so let's see what we have right now. Let's see if audio actually comes out of the speakers. So QtMultimedia. Reads forever, so it implemented the loop without me confirming. There's play and pause, but the grammar will change in time. Anything else prints the content of the file. Okay, doesn't use the recycle bin. Repeats forever. Polling music commands for new command files, correct. Okay, so we saw where it searches for the substring play and then a space to compute the name of the file to play, which is then converted as a QURL to be sent to the global variable that's the actual player, audio player. In a similar way, if the content of the command file is just pause, it's going to pause the global player. Otherwise, it writes whatever is inside the file if the grammar is not understood. All commands. Read content of file, trim it, and then convert from UTF-8, which is correct, to QString, which is probably, I don't know, UTF-16 little endian or something. UCS2. It connects to QPlayer. For playback errors. We don't have logging yet, so logging to a plain text file. All commands. So there's a timer and an interval in milliseconds such that it doesn't poll too often. 200 milliseconds, so every fifth of a second it looks for new commands inside tilde/music/commands, which is reasonable. Even 1 second would have been reasonable. So when I instructed to look inside the contents of the tilde/music/commands directory, it can do two things. Either set up a directory watcher on this directory, which is something that uses some Linux kernel mode feature, or in a loop, every number of milliseconds, it just looks if there's another command file and then does it. Okay. Looks okay. First playback of file. Whoa. First playback of file. Cool. Let's look at the Git history. Okay. I want to add another command such that I can see if playback actually works, because in this second the audio is started, but then 0.2 seconds later audio playback is being paused. So let's create a new file. Which does exactly what the first one does. So play always requires the file to play back, and pause doesn't require anything because you just pause the currently playing file. Let's clean up. Okay, and I'm going to see if audio comes out. So playback is okay, but I don't like the output of the audio QD executable. It's kind of not enough. So I wanted to write the actual command. So full path, the content, and then I want to see that my command is being executed. Even this, I know, might be output on std or something. I'm not exactly sure how to stop this process. Maybe I'll need a .sh file to stop it. Let's start with that. Audio QD, create stop process.sh file. So it wants to use pkill. I would have used kill-all -9, but I'm not exactly sure what pkill is. Hopefully it works. It certainly wants to test it, if it works or not. Matches only process whose exact name is audio QD, not some substring. So it won't touch the audio Q GUI, of course not. If nothing is running, no, not running, exit status 1. Okay. So I want that, and then the next one will be to improve a bit the text that's written. When writing to std out about a command file, after writing full path, write content of file. I'm not sure if we should be allowed to instantly pause. So if you go play and then instantly pause, does that make sense? Maybe when we go play, we should always wait at least, I don't know, 500 milliseconds, half a second. What's the name of the command? Okay, so when it writes to standard output, I want to have the confirmation that my command was actually run, and then don't immediately pause. If in my example, I have a play command, then a pause command, then a play command, so I have 3 commands. So it, after playing, should wait a bit such that I can hear a bit of noise or something, and then pause, and then play again. Yeah, so it explains what was going through my head. After a play command, hold the event loop for at least 500 milliseconds so playback actually gets to run instead of immediately following the pause, cutting the playback off. Okay, so I can click on options, re-entrancy guard while holding for playback. What was that? Keep playing for at least. So this thing, 500 milliseconds, never have it in comments. This is a magic string. This is going to become a constant, a config value even. So don't ever write magic values in comments. It's still testing to see everything works. Let's see what it did. A Q event loop. Hold. A Q timer single shot. Yeah, so you need to think about how this process works. So we have the audio QD executable, command line executable that never exits, which means in order not exit, it needs to have either a while true loop that sleeps 10 milliseconds or to use the Qt main loop. And then once it's using the Qt media player, QtMultimedia media player, that's probably already using the Qt main loop. And then you also are connecting to these two events of this Qt multimedia object. So you actually have, I don't know how many threads you actually need to have all of these things working correctly in a single process. So the media player is one kind of singleton object that you're commanding it to do things like play another track or pause or stop, whereas the main thread of the process is handling reading commands from the ~music/commands directory. So they have two different main loops, two different life cycles, two different things that they're preoccupied with. The Qt media player object is about, I'm not even sure what, about preparing, I know, WAV, wave files, wave bits in time for the next, playback of the audio output, sync, source, whatever. Whereas the main thread of the process is about reading the commands inside ~music/commands directory. Okay, so the actual stop was not what I thought, which I thought it would do a something equivalent to, I don't know, sleep of 500 milliseconds. Instead, it goes QTimer single shot. Okay. Now I see that it's advantageous to have parts of the of my previous prompt be parts of the git commit message. Yeah, it's always interesting when the LLM complains that I have changed files behind its back. So it says file3.txt was added to commands directory without the LLM actually knowing that that happened. So play, wait 500 milliseconds, and then pause, and then do play, which is way longer than 500 milliseconds. And it keeps the readme file that it generated in sync with its things, which is making sure that the readme.md file doesn't bitrot that easily, but yeah, it will bitrot once both the LLM and humans added the same readme.md files. Okay. Why would you say inside the readme.md that there's a 500 millisecond minimum playback time? Who is going to consume this information? Again, this thing is probably configurable. Okay, when playing back, at least, when playing back, do it for at least half a second. And I actually want to see the output. And I'm not sure what I'm looking at. So it says command 1 wants to play, and then the QtMedia player object is created correctly, so instantiated correctly and starts doing its thing. Then it's told to pause, and then immediately it's told to play, which just resumes playback. So maybe I would have expected to see this entire output again when we say play after pause. But it's okay the way it is. So now we have kind of enough functionality on the backend. So we have a never-ending loop. We have an IPC inter-process communication mechanism, which is just plain text files, which just one single file, line per file inside one single directory, tilde/music/commands, which means that we can start working at the QML graphical user interface application. Then how do we stop this thing? We need a third tab opened inside the virtual terminal inside the Visual Studio Code, which stops the playback. So that's audio QD slash, what was the name of the thing? Stop process. Okay, let's make sure the process has stopped. Okay, I'm not sure how drastic is this killing? Does it actually kill it, or does it, I know, tell it to stop gracefully? Does it send Control C to it? Okay. Audio Q without a D. Create simple QML app in audio Q subdirectory. Okay. The QML part should be used mostly for GUI. Actual backend code would be written in C++. There should probably be a main model that's offered to the main window. A huge prompt again, because we're creating an application from scratch. So this is the initial commit of the subdirectory audio queue. This is the scaffolding. So we want to scaffold a new C++ application that uses Qt Framework 6, uses CMake, has a main loop, has graphical user interface written in the QML programming language. There's C++ source code in the event implementations, as it were, of the graphical user interface. So there should be a clean separation between GUI and backend. One is written in QML, the other in C++. There should be a model, an object that interfaces between these two programming languages. And I tell it that this model should contain a last played track file path, where I have it. Hopefully part of the text is truncated. And why? Because when I start my car on its infotainment, it immediately, after I open the music application, it automatically tells me the audio file, the audio track that I have played back most recently, and it also remembers the seek time, the seek position in the track. And we'll start from by just displaying the full path, or whatever, the name of the file, and then we'll actually try to extract the correct values for the track name and the track band from various places, and also the track length. And we'll create empty buttons that don't do anything for play, pause, next, and previous. Hopefully it creates just one button for play or pause. Something happened here. I see that it's also looking at my selection, so I selected this part of the text, buttons for play, pause, next track, previous track, to paste it inside the prompt. But it also looks at the only selection, so just one text with just one file opened in a tab in Visual Studio Code, and then just this is the selection. It's going to think some, because again, it's going to scaffold an application with, I don't know, 5 files or something. So let's see what it wants to do. It's preparing to find QML installation. So it created a correct file, cmeg.txt in the correct place, subdirectory audio queue, cmeg minimum required, project audio queue, correct. Qt packages, core GUI QML quick, correct. A window model with the correct name, main window model, CPP and H. And then QML, just on file, main window.qml. Not sure if the name of this QML file should actually be main window.qml. Okay. Let's create the file. Let's see what it does here. Main window model sounds correct. Q property, Q object, last played track file path, reader, writer, and notifier. Play, pause, next, previous. Wow, it is already preparing to have all of those things wired up, even if I didn't say anything about. Select track index. Set playing, which is for play, pause. Okay, interesting. Decision choice. So there's directory with MP3 files, which it needs to look through to find the one that's the first. And then commands, where it communicates with AudioQD. Okay, let's see what it does. There's a constructor. There's mtracks that holds the, I know what, the QDIR entry list result. Current track name. If it's playing. So this is the property read. This is the property path, the property setter. Play and pause a single method, as I would expect. Just calls set playing with false or true. It prepares the same syntax for tilde/music/commands that we have specified, which is just two possibilities, either pause or then play and then the name of the file. With file, let's again look at the command. So it's play, no double quotes, but then it uses URI syntax, because otherwise we have in here all sorts of complications, like what we do with spaces in file names, what we do with characters that are non-UTF-8 but valid Linux, VFS, ext4 characters in file paths or file names or directory names. So all of those problems just disappear when we use the file protocol, at least for QURL. Both the writer and the reader of this syntax use the same QURI from Qt framework. So I guess that the conversion is not lossy, it's lossless. Okay. And now okay, that's that. mindex +1. So the next track changes there's a list with all of the files that exist in /music directory, and it changes the index, which starts playback, etc., etc. Writes to audio QD a command of type play space the new track. It uses global unique IDs, respects the fact that I want extension txt, but I'm not sure if the writing is atomic. So let's ask immediately. Not sure what happened there. I just clicked. Did I pick yes or no? Okay, and the QML, it didn't use QML non QQC2, so it straight went to QQC2, Qt Quick Controls. So instead of using a top level item of type item, it uses top level object of type window. Main window, it uses internationalization. I'm not sure why we would translate the name of the app. There's columns. There's what we asked for, which is a label with full path of the file, or no, just the file name of the mp3 file. And then 3 buttons in a row, of course. Play, pause, next, and previous. Yeah, I'm not sure if this order is perfect, but yeah, it's one way of doing it. So you must be very careful when you click with the mouse, because if I click now, it's going to probably select option 3. Yes. And the main is the world builder. It creates a QML engine, puts inside the main window.qml file, which I'm not sure where it comes from, either from a file on the disk or from a Q resource. The QML world and C++ world communicate through this thing, main window model, which is set like this, which I'm not sure if it actually uses the QML syntax for setting the model. In the sense that can we associate the most important top level QML item that's inside the engine with its model without writing C++ source code other than annotating the class main window model? We'll see about that. Okay, so infinite loop, main loop, graphical user interface, main loop of Qt. And that's it. Looks legit. So it runs CMake commands by hand. I instructed to create .sh files similar to as the ones that exist in AudioQD. So rebuild, incremental build, run, start and stop, run and stop. Package config. Test compiler flags are wrong. And it even tests by running the application, and because it's using the QML engine, it tells it to not output anything, to run in headless mode. After that worked, now it's starting it in X11 mode and it's killing the app just to test that it looks okay. Confirm that the graphic user interface renders. It took a screenshot. In /tmp directory. It looks, as I asked, it doesn't really look like a infotainment application because those are probably in dark mode and the buttons are more 3D and more, I don't know, see-through or something. So it doesn't look as professional and polished. XWD. XDoTool. So it doesn't know how to take screenshot of just the window. And I'm not allowed to move the mouse while it's taking screenshots. It detected kwin. Unique colors, dominant colors. Okay, so verified standalone test, the initial path, and then what the next button does, what the previous button does, play pause works correctly, started the application on, I'm not sure why it's, yeah, so in X11 mode, which is correct, computed the initial size of the window, which is correct, looked at the text of buttons and label. The capture isn't blank. Okay. Yes, of course I want those. Let's do a commit first and then we'll tell it to create a .sh file. So let's look a bit at what it generated. So main window model C++ source code file, main entry point main.cpp file, main window.qml file. Main window contains a window, a column, a label, so type text, and then row of buttons. We saw that it looks okay for the initial version of the application. Okay. The window model has all of the implementations of the events behind the button clicks and behind the content of the track file name text, which is this thing. QInvocable 3 button on clicks. I would have liked to have this, you know, maybe be on button click or something, not just play pause. I'm not sure why it invented this coding convention with m underscore for members. I don't really like it, but it was on vogue in the year 2000 with Visual Studio 6. Yeah, actually with the start of C#, because before you had m_str last played or something. So it also contains the type of the field, not just the fact that it's a field, m_ in the sense of member. Hungarian notation. I don't like it that it doesn't put curly brackets everywhere. I'll actually instruct it to do so right now. Okay, so audio queue, add GUI up. Place curly brackets around single statement bodies. You should probably have all of your coding convention prepared before creating the application. I'm not sure how you would specify this. Maybe in the top level readme file you would have link to a coding conventions.md file. So yes, that's what I want. Oh, many places. Yes. Don't ask again for CMake build. Yeah, if it builds, it's enough. Nothing else would have, I know, the GUI will continue to work if you put curly brackets. Let's see if I can get the previous. Yeah, so there's a correlation between the prompt that I give to the LLM inside Cloud Code and the git commit message titles. So next up, I'm going to need the 5 bash script files for the audio queue directory, but I want to have them independent. So when I run stop audio queue, it doesn't also stop audio QD or vice versa or something. I'm going to run the script files independent inside different directories. Can even prepare such a thing. So this is for so do you want rebuild.sh in the correct directory? Yes. Incremental build, yes. Run, correct. It even sets the +x chmod bit to make it executable, which I didn't ask for. I'm not sure how well it travels through Git history. For 3 scripts. Okay, and let's see if we have the next script, which is the one to stop. We don't really. So it's a graphical user interface application. We can close it easily. We don't need a stop process script file. Okay, so let me run everything, see if it works okay. So we have a console just for this guy. Let's rename this thing. How do we do that? And the first console is to start audio QD run. Okay, and then another console to start audio Q run. Okay, let's look at the output in audio Q. So it copied the 3 files from the commands backup directory to the commands directory. It has executed them. And now we want to press some of these buttons to see if files will appear inside ~music/commands directory. So play pause. And we can see a play command, and then pause, and we see a pause command, and then next. Wow. How is next implemented? Play 002. So until now we have played ~music/001.mp3, and then it jumped to play ~music/002, not one mp3, and that has actually affected the Q Media Player object instance, the global one, because it has changed the current track. And we can go next one more because we have 3 mp3 files in the ~music directory. What if we go next to one more? Goes to 11. Do we have an 11? And then it goes to 1, 2, 3. Wow. Cool. So it has automatically implemented to continue with the first track in playlist after it reaches the last track in playlist. Okay, next up we want to extract information. So to display album, artist, and whatever. Artist and title, these things. So audio QD has D in name and suggests that it's the one that does talking to the hard disk, playing back music, whereas this is not the case. Audio QD is just for the output hardware device, for the sound card. That's all that it is. So the name is wrong. It should have been, I don't know, audio Q underscore audio sync or something. It's just that. It's only about keeping a QMultimedia object alive such that there's just one audio QD at the same time, that there's just one object of type QMultimedia at one time. We're using just one sound card at a time, just one sound card output at a time, that there's no glitches when we switch from one track to the next. response is not immediate when we click the button, but the audio is continuous and perfect. So what you hear in your speakers should be exactly what you would expect. So when you play pause, when the command pause gets picked up, it pauses beautifully. The sound is correct. I'm not sure what the sound of pause should hear like, but that's what I would expect. So not audio glitches, audio noises, or screeches or something that affects can be heard by human ears when you go next, play, stop, pause, etc. Playback should be gapless, etc. All of those things, putting bits into the audio card is for the audio QD executable. The rest, everything else, computing the MP3 metadata, ID3 tags, etc., etc., listing contents of the music directory, changing the source of, so the directory that the MP3 files get picked up from, everything else is about the audio queue process. Okay, so I want to use the values. So I want artist and title. Okay, audio queue, QtMultimedia when playing back an MP3 file says in main window QML we should display not the file name but artist and then title. Let's see if it knows BNF syntax or what's this thing with less than, greater than. So this is a placeholder for artist, less than artist, greater than, and then a space, and then minus, and then another space, and then a placeholder for the title. And this is a concatenation, string concatenation. So when QtMultimedia is playing back the MP3 file, it knows these values. If that data exists, if not, it should display file name, including extension. Okay, so in the case we have something better than the file name, we display that. If not, we just fall back to what we had right now, which is the file name. On a automotive infotainment display, it would be wrong to have the full path. So /home/ whatever /music /001.mp3. But then 001.mp3 is something rather than nothing. When you are going to skip to the next track, you will want to know the file name. But then if you have better data than the file name, display that. Okay, current track name. Yeah, should be track display name, correct? That's correct. That's correct. And then somehow it's going to compute the metadata about MP3 files. We will support other file types, not just MP3 files, whatever QtMultimedia supports. So I know MP4, M4A, whatever. .ogg, other file extensions and file types. So there's a QMedia player which is needed. Unfortunately, I'm not sure why. It goes set source on it. And then there's this property on the metadata player, which is metadata, and then there's author and title. I'm not sure if that's the canonical way, the most recommended way to use the Qt framework version 6 to get at the metadata, the ID3 tags or whatever else is there inside an MP3 file to instantiate a full-blown media player just for this functionality, which just requires reading maybe not even the entire file from the disk, which also will require setting up a connection to the metadata changed player. I don't we need to specify to this media player don't connect to any audio syncs at all? And then how is it destroying this? So it's a meta player which is a member. So it's kept there forever. It just goes metadata changed and set source QURL. Okay, concatenation is correct. It looks okay. Fixes the QML. We need the QtMultimedia for the metadata. More places. It prefers to use incremental build instead of inventing its own. I know what was the command that it wanted. Sometimes G++, sometimes CMake, sometimes. Okay. Do you want to proceed? Yeah, it can show the GUI and compute in there. Take a screenshot. I'm not sure if it can actually read screenshots in the sense of if it can read labels inside the screenshot. I'm not sure if it was successful last time. Contributing artist, what is that? The FFmpeg backend of Qt Multimedia looks at the ID3 tag artist, which is mapped as contributing artist. Yeah. Otherwise, it would need to read through the source code of the Qt Multimedia module to find out what is written by the Qt Multimedia as artist in here. What value from which ID3 tag. Okay, what do we want? Yes. It's fixing a ton of the things that I would have seen if I do the development loop myself, which is building and then running and then looking at all of the GUI and clicking everywhere. Let's look at the changes that we have until now. So audio QD again is just for putting bits or bytes into the actual audio hardware. And then the rest of the things happen inside audio Q. Audio Q, yes, needs to load MP3 files to look inside their content, needs to have knowledge that MP3 standard allows for ID3 tags, which is another standard, so that's why we need QtMultimedia. What's displayed in the main label is the best information that we can display to the user about that track. Okay, we have the the Q media player that never disappears as long as the GUI app runs. And then to it, it's set source, event, metadata change is triggered, method update track display name is being called. Which does this heavy lifting, contributing artist or author, and then space minus space and then title. Track display name. Yeah, I'm not sure if so this is a business analysis thing. We should look at the domain of audio players of Winamp. What is an entity, a file named? It might be called track, if I remember correctly, because the button to go to the next probably had the tooltip next track and previous track for the previous button. So maybe the atom or the main window of the audio player is a track. A track has a display title, not display name, but display title, right? And then it has a length, a current seek position. Let's implement seek next. So improve the track display title. Again, when it's trying to take screenshots, you need to leave it alone. Don't change focus because it's going to take screenshot of the wrong window. Which means probably you need to run these things in parallel, visible at the same time. I'm not sure how you can approve when it's showing an application that it wants to screenshot. Or why did it start the GUI? Variant to string. Oh. I'm not sure if it knows that the app is still running, the GUI part. And the backend part is also running. Whoa. Close processes, man. So let's see what it said. So seems to have worked correctly because it has run the GUI up, and I'm not sure what it did to it. Maybe it took a screenshot or something. The app launched and rendered. The process still seems to be around. All 4 tracks now display the correct values. Correct. Let's do a commit of this. And then there's something wrong with the display title because it's too long. So it says that it has fixed an issue, which in which case there's contributing artist, not a string, but a string list with Joshua Rifkin and piano. Okay, and so it needs to look at just the first item in there. So there should be a first or a 0. So it goes variant to string and it joins everything. Wow. Strange MP3 I got there where there's 2 contributing artists. The piano is a contributing artist and Joshua Rifkin is a contributing artist. Yeah. Maybe for tracks with, I know, 20 reggaeton singers on the same track, this is going to get complicated really fast. So that's multiple artists. So I actually don't want this. I want the title first and then the artist second and everything truncated somehow. Okay. The track display title should use a complicated algorithm. Max size 120 characters. First comes title truncated to first 100 characters, then the rest of the charts would be the first in artists. Yeah, so I want some ellipse sizing happening there. There's two ways of doing it that I saw. Is either you ellipse size, so the track display title remains fixed but not. There's a lossy compression there. I don't know, you put some 3 dots or something, but the text stays fixed, which is, I say, advantageous because you're not distracting the driver of the car. The alternative is if you scroll the track display title towards the left and then towards the right, or in some other interesting ways, when the label is limited to just 120 characters in our example. So now it doesn't concatenate the artists, yeah, my prompt was not perfect. Okay, the rest of the chars should be the first chars in the concatenated artists. I said artists, but it wasn't enough. So it knows how to compute maximum size 120. I saw it did that. First comes title truncated to 100 characters. It knows about that. Then concatenation, and then the rest of the chars should be the first chars in the concatenation. Okay, like this. Okay, at some point we'll get to seeking, the seek bar, horizontal bar, and then when clicking on it, it should instruct the audio QD to seek inside the global Q media player. So make display name. Wow, what a name, make display name. There is a budget, yes, budget. Hey boy, why artists and not artists? It's artists budget. Yeah, okay. Sounds legit. It computes title first, which I'm not sure why it did that. There's now a name for the artists, and it's plural. Okay, sounds okay. And we're already at the point where the conversation is too large, needs to be compacted. And it still tries and compiles and tests everything. MOC the header. Why would you use MOC when you have a shell script that does everything in your place? Because it creates additional cute applications. So in the temporary directory, it creates all sorts of files, and then it tries to compile them. Probably to run blocks of the C++ source code that we have in the current project, which is a very important strategy to have. Like me as a developer, I never did that. So whenever I wanted to test parts, of an application, like, I don't know, 2 methods, it never occurred to me, let's just copy paste those 2 methods in a totally different CPP file, temporary one, and compile everything from scratch. I don't even know how to compile things from scratch using C++, because you have a ton of dependencies. You depend on ffmpeg, QtMultimedia, cmake, package config, blah, 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 blah. There's a ton of package there. But all of that package is gratis to an LLM. Okay, let's see where we are. So we want a tab inside Visual Studio Code, terminal named AudioQD, correct name. So AudioQD keeps running because we didn't change the source code of AudioQD. As long as we're developing exclusively in the top level directory and then AudioQ subdirectory, there's no need to actually build or stop or run the AudioQD, the other process. Okay, that makes sense. And then AudioQ run. Okay, so all we need at this point is to make the window a bit wider. But I can live with that. Okay, limit track display title. Okay, let's actually instruct it. Use the term track display title. Display title doesn't really exist. Display name exists. Display title. Let's pick display title and stick with that. So track display name replaced with track display title. Yeah, display name exists in the industry, so that's probably why it picked it. But display title is what I feel like right now. Maybe I'll change my mind in time. A ton of changes. Yeah, you can do these manually using Ctrl-Shift-H in Visual Studio Code, so global replace. But you need to be careful with capitalization and everything. So it might be isPlay. So you would replace this string case sensitive. So isPlay with lowercase I without a D. IsPlay name to isPlay title with this capitalization. So always uppercase N, uppercase T. And that should do it. But it also did track display title changed, which is something. Ah, cool. It's more grabbable for me right now. So if we use the same concept everywhere, track display title, then that's better. But it probably was a single name for this thing, track display name everywhere. Okay, let's prepare the commit. Yeah, I can see this thing, which is name instead of display title. Local variable. Okay, so that's audio cue. Use okay. We should widen the width of the window a bit. Let's see if everything just works. So main window QML, current width 480. Let's make it 580. Let's compile everything. How do we do that? This thing. Audio cue rebuild. So there's resources, QML resources, RCC, QML cache, audio cue main window QML.cpp. So that's where the main window object comes from, this guy. And then run. Maybe even larger a bit. 620. Let's see if incremental build is enough, if we just change the QML. We should see the line for RCC main window QML, and we do see it. So I guess it works. At some point, we'll ask it to add more styling to this thing. Make it look like a... Let's do it immediately after we add the seek bar. Let's go seek bar and then style. Audio cue. So what was it? The buttons bar is important to always be at the bottom. Above it, place a seek bar horizontal. And then we'll see where we put the time remaining. Yeah, let's see. It's probably going to infer what a horizontal seek bar is. It knows that we're in a graphical user interface application that's an audio player, and those things do have a seek bar, and there's some communication with audio QD that's needed with a different verb, etc. Playback protocol, right? What it says in here. For it to actually seek. Entered plan mode in Cloud Code. There's nothing to really think of. There's a protocol between audio queue and audio QD, and IPC process communication protocol. There's just two verbs right now, play with a URL, a QURI, and then pause, and then we'll need a third communication verb, which is, I don't know, seek, and then space, and then in seconds, an integer. Fully functional, seek milliseconds. Wow. Can't we seek seconds? Yeah, it will need to compute the seek parse length, so the track length in seconds. Yeah, this is going to be a bigger Git commit. In QML, widen the window to make the track display title fit. Let's see what it does. Centers the user wants the button bar pinned to the bottom directly above it. Yes, that's the way it's on my car right now. Okay. Audio queue daemon. Only process plays audio. Audio queue GUI sends one shot. Play URL pause. Which audio queue pulse QD pulse every 200 milliseconds. Okay, a new seek milliseconds command in the daemon to seek. The GUI silently mirrors the track. No, it invents something. It makes something up. What did I just approve? So that was a proof with research with proof of concept, and I approved that. Position changed in the QML. Seek, but I'll tell it then to switch from track position milliseconds to track position seconds. Position, is position okay? Or what should be the position? Yes, track position milliseconds, seconds. So I have just bulk approved the research with proof of concept, and then it went on to edit all of the files. Didn't ask for approval, even though I told it to always ask for approval, don't write anything. Q audio output. Why do we need a Q audio output? Wow, set volume to 0. What are you talking about? So makes the audio player in audio Q, not in D, resemble a Q audio player by attaching a output and setting the volume to 0. just to track the position. Do we need that? I want the communication to not be bidirectional, but it's going to be, right? At some point, audio QD will start sending back, I know what, to say, to tell its status via standard output or something, that the position has changed, or yeah. Yeah, we'll see how far we can get with two QtMultimedia audio players in two different processes being synchronized with one another. The jumps will not be perfect, right? So let's see what is it happening. Verify seeking by clicking on the GUI. Whoa. Analyzing color content. Stop task. And that's it. We have the final text from the LLM. So let's see what happened. Play, seek, pause. The seek command was written correctly in tilde slash music slash commands. Position stays 0. I'm not sure it. Yeah, so only implemented on the non-D part. What it did? Inside D, yes. So if the command starts with seek, then it tells the global audio player to change position. Play and pause. Wow, meta player. I didn't expect this outcome at all. So I would I expected that extracting ID3 metadata tags from MP3 files would not require a full-blown Qt multimedia audio player control. And then I thought that somehow using the same mechanism, using MP3 metadata, you can compute the actual correct length of the track in milliseconds, whereas this doesn't seem to be the case in here, in this current implementation. And then I wanted in the slider, in the horizontal slider, if I change the position in there, then the GUI app should just use a plain timer to compute the time remaining and to move the position of the inside the seek bar automatically. I didn't expect to have a full-blown MP3 player in two different processes playing at the same time, kind of synchronized way. Totally unexpected. Okay, but that's what we have. So now we have the text at the top, which should be centered, slider, and then a row of buttons. Okay, track display title, and then there's just a slide bar, slider with main window model seek on moved. and there's a duration and 1, because why? Because 1 millisecond is guaranteed to exist, and then we can't change the seek to be in non-milliseconds, because there might be really short MP3 files there that are less than 1 second, which is strange. Seek slider. Okay, change the seek protocol from milliseconds to seconds. It should still allow for huge numbers. Maybe you have an MP3 file that's, I don't know, 5 days long. It remembered that there's a readme file just for the D, and that it needs to keep it in sync. Okay, again it entered auto mode on. I'm not exactly sure how. So seek and then position in milliseconds. Can't we have this position in seconds? Maybe not. Fractional allowed 3.5. Yes, that's the implication, right? If you don't go with milliseconds, you'll need to have all sorts of floating points there. Let's stop this thing. We want to proceed. No. Yeah, so we're better served with milliseconds because like this we can use really long integers. Versus if we go with seconds, we might need to specify the C++ double type. So to use floating points. I'll undo everything in here, and I'll tell it to fix this thing. So fix the readme for the D, audio QD. So milliseconds, yes, instead of seconds, that's what I want. Pause, seek, or play. Why would you list all of these in here instead of having a... Why would you list them on a line with examples? Okay, let's see what your changes are. So the 3 verse possible, commands possible, play, and then QURI, pause, seek milliseconds. Correct. It's using my username in readme files, which is a big no-no. Okay, let's run everything, make sure it works, and then we'll do a bit of styling. So this is the place where we should build audio QD. So the D, we'll build it as thoroughly as possible. Probably not needed because maybe, no, not maybe. It's certainly needed. And then run the daemon. Okay. And it create, where is this sick coming from? That was extremely strange what happened there. Let's stop it and start from scratch. So we have three commands files, playtext files in the commands backup directory, play, pause, and then play some more. Okay, and then for audio cue, we want to build completely. And then run. Okay, and it's not synchronized with the backend because the backend already received some commands. So we should, I know, play. Let's look at the output. And we have progress in the slider. We have seek time in milliseconds. Cool. I'm not sure what happens when the tracks finishes. Yeah, in here we lose that contract where the D part handles only bits going to the audio hardware, and that's as gapless as possible. So it needs to, this thing needs to be sent commands well in advance. Like it should be sent the next track each time when it receives a play command. And if the whatever, because it needs to advance, I'm not exactly sure how we can continue with the split between audio queue and audio QD if audio QD just cannot send status back to audio queue. Because at this point, audio QD will want to go to the next track because it can go gapless. Whereas if it waits for commands from the front end, that might not be exactly at the millisecond where track 1 ends and then track 2 should immediately start. Yeah, complications with software design. Okay, at this point, I want to remove the concept of the commands ba underscore backup directory completely. Can we press Ctrl C here? Yes, we can. Okay, so this directory was just for exercising without any front and the backend, so there's no need any longer for it. Okay, and let's tell the LLM there is no no longer. Okay, so this was just initial support such that we can develop the backend, whatever, D part without the GUI part. Not even sure if it was commands underscore BK or what was the exact name of the directory. So yes, it deletes the constant, branding of even. No need to restore commands from backup, correct? Don't call. Okay. And it's going to test this thing. Restore commands from backup. It was support for this directory was kind of isolated, so it was easy to remove. And in just one of the two processes. We can commit because then we can amend the last commit. No need to do it. Okay, where we were, audio QD. Rebuild, we can do an incremental build, but there's a really short number of C++ translation units, so it's not, incremental build is not hugely faster than a rebuild. Okay, nothing to do, it just stays in a loop, there's no commands, it waits for commands to appear. Okay, last one, incremental build just in case of the GUI. And in here, we go play, and we jump to the middle. So a complete separation between the thing that plays beats on your whatever music on your actual hardware and the rest of the app totally makes sense. I would always implement that thing. Why? Because maybe the GUI app crashes. Because I don't know why. Because it's a very clear concern, and it's very clear that there's a boundary there, and it's clear for me where to separate the thing. But then, indeed, we will need Qt-style bidirectional communication from between the processes. So the D process needs to expose Qt signals and slots towards the main window model, at least from the other process. Via, I know, I'm not exactly sure what, maybe I don't know, web sockets, or I don't really know what's the better IPC to use in here. So when the D process is created, somewhere is exposed the IPC channel, and then maybe you might even want to have multiple UIs or close the UI and restart it and whatever. Playback should just continue if you close the GUI. Makes sense for me. And in Android apps, I'm not even sure if you exit the current app and the audio keeps playing. if the GUI app is still running or is paused or is hibernated or what's happening. So again, totally makes sense. Okay, at this point, we'll ask it to style it heavily. Audio Q, where are you? Without a E is a automotive infotainment glitzy app needs to have a only use dark mode, should not catch the attention of the car driver, buttons in the button bar should be as large as possible and as near to the bottom of the window as possible, such that the car driver easily touch the buttons with the finger. Okay, so these are just the first wave of GUI styling instructions. So we want everything to be dark mode. Why? Because everything is actually dark in daytime on the in all of the controls that the car driver sees, the speedometer, I know, the gauge for fuel, etc. Everything is dark. There's no lights turned on during the day, and then during the night it's even more important to have everything be dark mode. The user, the car driver, actually interacts with the music player app by just turning the volume, which doesn't have anything to do with the music app. They have a knob, they have buttons on the steering wheel, and then emergency closing the app somehow or muting the app. That's also a global control, not related to the application. Calm, dark automotive layout with big bottom touch targets. Let's see what you propose. And then the user actually has dedicated buttons for up and down, which are going to be mapped to this app's button for next track and previous track. And if the user really interacts with the app, is to, to play pause the app. Or to seek, but seeking is really, really dangerous when you're driving the car. Really dangerous. Color scheme Qt dark. Wow. Yeah, I said glitzy. By glitzy, I meant make the buttons 3D or something. Okay, so it uses the Qt.dark built-in theme from what I see. There's CSS style palettes and colors. Previous, play, and next. Previous, play, and next. Yes, that's the way I would do it. So previous first and then next last. And if the user is actually going to click anywhere, then we really want icons on the 3 buttons. Otherwise, the text is too dangerous. Okay, let's look at the changes. So it changed from window to application window. Maybe because I'm not sure why. With quick layouts. Dark muted background. There's a palette. There's a ton of colors everywhere, which I'm not sure that's the way to do it. To assign colors in individual QML items, whereas you could do it more centrally. Rectangle, background rectangle. Row layout. Okay, I like what I see. It's the first increment towards changing the GUI towards a automotive style infotainment, but not infotainment. We don't want to provide a screen for the displays that only the back passengers can see. We want a display that also is viable for the car driver. Okay, let's see that everything actually works. We don't need to touch AutoQD. This other guy will need to incremental build because we only change the QML and then run. There's this glitch where what happens if we scroll without playing? Doesn't work. Cool. It doesn't work at all. Okay, so there's this bug that we cannot use the scroll any longer, the seek bar. And then the seek bar is covered a bit by the bottom buttons. And there's missing icons on the 3 buttons. So let's do them one by one. The car driver needs icons before the text inside the 3 buttons. Can we use a font for displaying these icons? Yeah, so for the car driver is really important to not read text, to have the attention of the driver on the road, on the steering wheel, and then for a half a second, the attention of the driver moves to a completely different screen, needs to read everything. So it's really important to be able to recognize really fast which one is the play pause button, which is, it's in the middle. But then if it actually has a pause button, you can see that it's actually pausing. Otherwise, you'll need to actually read the text to see if the audio player is playing back or not, or is being paused. Proper icon font. Material icons. FC query. Font config. Material icons regular TTF. Okay, so as a resource, /fonts /material icons minus regular.ttf, as I would expect, correct. A font loader which embeds icon from material icons bundled as resources. So QML has support for this very widely used technology in web apps, which is fonts with a ton of glyphs. Previous button text and previous button icon. What is that? What are you trying to do here? So there's a button that has as background a rectangle and is the previous button. And it has inside it a row with two texts. One is the previous text, which actually says previous. And then another one is the icon font.name. Yeah, because maybe we want to style the text, so to use the same font everywhere in the app, so for all of the actual characters, but then the icons should all use the exact same other font, which is material regular. Doesn't know the current content of main window.qml because I have changed the width. I made it a bit wider or something. / escapes. Oh, that's what. Yeah, so instead of unprintable characters, it went to encoding. Skip previous, and it uses comments, as I said, on the same line. Hopefully. Icon before the label. But can't you name this thing? Can you put a name to the text ID? Isn't there an ID for text where you can say icon before the label? So convert it to source code instead of comments. But it changed just one of the three buttons, right? The font has been vendored, so it has been downloaded, and we'll put it on version control on Git. Previous play and play has two icons, pause and play, correct? All three of them. Now it's testing the GUI. Okay, so we'll ask it to just fix the slider. Then we'll ask it to put some glossy, frosty ice cream, aqua, something on it to be more glitzy. And then that should be it. So yes, the application is very flat, which corresponds to Android, corresponds to Material, but let's make it stick out a bit. Python import, what is that? From PIL import image, image open, PNG, crop. So maybe it wants to see if the two images, I don't know, the two labels, whatever, two QML texts, I don't know, I have the same bottom horizontal line or something. Maybe it should make the actual icons bold at least, if not of a bigger font size. Okay, so let's test everything. AudioQD continues working. We'll do a full rebuild this time of AudioQ. There's extra resources. And we'll run. Yeah, so it's aligned. So there's a QML text object here and another one here. So previous is one. Where can we see that? So for the previous, there's two texts. This is the actual caption, the English text, and this is the icon. And they're aligned perfectly. So the bottom line is aligned. The pixel size is hard-coded to 32. In this case, I'm not sure why, for the icon. Whereas for the button, it's 22. But it looks okay, and there's no need to make the icons be bold fonts. Okay, I'll just tell it that the slider doesn't work, and that's the penultimate thing that we want to do. Okay, so that's main window. Add icons to bottom buttons. Bottom buttons. Okay. The seek bar should be moved. Let's make so the up should be polar and have a 4:3 aspect ratio. That's probably the aspect ratio of car displays. I'm going to guess. The seek bar should be moved upwards. Make there is currently a bug that the sig bar is not applicable. Okay, so make the aspect ratio 4:3, which means keep the same width but make the height a bit taller, and then fix the sig bar. Maybe we should use a very standard 4:3 resolution, or no, whatever. Standard 4:3 resolution for monitors and apply it as the height and width of the window. Okay, so it has selected something that's 4:3. It widened the up 20 pixels, which is okay. The position of the labels is not centered on the buttons. But let's first have the slider working. Whoa. Yeah. These apps should, of course, not use relative, whatever, should not use fixed positions. If it's an actual car display, then we probably can guess 2 or 3 possible resolutions. The application will be shown full screen. And yes, we can improve given those very restricted list of possible resolutions, possible width and height of the window. But then we didn't yet specify all of the controls inside the window, so indeed it doesn't know where it should place the only 3 rows that the apps currently has. The app will probably end up having, I don't know, 7 rows with maybe some very tiny labels, very short labels on the top saying something like, I don't know, playlist repeat is turned on, or playlist shuffle is turned on, or the current equalization profile or something. And we need to display somewhere the track length and track position or remaining time. So it tries to automatically click and take screenshots and see if the screenshots actually work by using a Python script that makes the image really small and looks at the contrast. The header didn't move. Yeah, it did. I can see it did. Can snap the handle back. Yeah, and then additional features if you want this application to work both on I don't know, maybe mobile phones plus Android car infotainment plus desktops. Maybe you also want to be able to have the up and down arrow key mapped to the previous and next buttons, or maybe your keyboard has dedicated previous and next track buttons, which probably will require that you implement MPRIS protocol. What else? Center the labels inside buttons. Have a button, a settings button that will change the currently configured ~media directory. Maybe you want to play back music from a USB stick, for instance. So there's a ton of features that you can add at this point to the app. One of the first that you should add, if this is also intended to be a Windows app, a Linux app, you need to be a good Linux citizen, so create an app icon for the app, create a desktop file for the app, create a app ID, so a reverse DNS unique name that you control, create a Flatpak of the application package, put it on FlatHub. So there's a ton of work ahead. And support for shuffling playlists. For that, you will need a dedicated button to shuffle the playlist, but you will also need to have the list of tracks, or the actual playlist, live somewhere inside Audio QD, because Audio QD will, or who is going to be in charge of advancing to the next track if the GUI app crashes, or if the user exits the music app and switches to the Maps app in Android for automotive. Keep target in sync with real playback. What is that? So when you're seeking, it doesn't really matter to that the two audio players that you have in two different processes are really in sync, because you're going to tell both, here is the new sync position that I want. But then it's important for the two players to know the current track, and if the audio QD process has the playlist, and that's the canonical place where the playlist is stored, and advances automatically to the next track in the list, then somehow it needs to communicate back to the GUI app, such that when you start the GUI app knows the current status of the audio QD process. Emit position changed. Okay. More screenshotting. I'm not sure how it's taking screenshots, if it's actually taking screenshots of windows by name or just about the window that's currently focused. Because the currently focused window is, I'm not exactly sure what, because we can see the tooltips from the KDE Plasma main panel. Yeah, so that's how I would probably implement it. So the full uh, media player, 90% of it actually lives on the D side because it can survive if you kill the GUI app. When you start the GUI app, the first thing it does, it asks for the state from the D process and displays it. So it's just, I don't know, similar to a dummy input device, the GUI app, whereas the state and everything is actually in the D process. And even the current playlist, if you want to display it on the GUI process, you need to ask for the contents of the current playlist from the D process. And probably you can even create a web UI to this to this audio QD process. Let's test if everything works. So the audio QD was stopped. I'm not sure why. Okay, and the GUI app. Run it and play first, otherwise the SIG bar doesn't work. The contrast is not that great between the part of the SIG bar that's done and the part that will be done. So the left and the right sides of the SIG bar. Pause. Next. And next plays automatically. That's great. And pause. And SIG. What did SIG do? I did not expect this many SIGs. So after pause, I pressed SIG a million times or something. That's definitely a bug. Yeah. So I didn't release the button. Okay, that's an important bug. Let's fix that. So audio cue only when I see that thing on mouse up. Only on mouse up when I release the scroll in the SIG bar. The segment is sent. So there's the concept of mouse down and being inside the drag, and then mouse out, mouse whatever. And then there's also mouse over. So the event of seeking is only important for the bulk of the app when I release the drag. So when I stop pressing the left mouse button in the case of using a mouse. Yes, you want the entire drag operation to animate the slider if the slider doesn't have built-in functionality, if you want to do custom painting on top of the slider while the left mouse button is still pressed and you move the mouse around. But for actually talking to audio QD, you should talk as rarely as possible. Extremely rarely, like the user only does seek, next, previous, and pause play. That's it. And that's too much for the user because, again, the user might have an accident. How do you do drag and drop with X11 automation? So it totally uses X11 automation to click. It also guesses the point where it should click. But then how does it drag and drop? On pressed changed. Yeah, so on moved, on the event of on move, it did the seek, which is very wrong. There should be a mouse drag and event or something. If I just click and raise, that's not a drag and drop. Yeah, but I don't need to drag and drop, I can click. Click down, click up. When you click down, nothing should. What should happen when you click, for instance, here? I don't know. This is GUI things that people have thought about a lot, and they have fixed all of the possible issues that I could come up with. But still, don't do anything on mouse down because that's me initiating a decision. Maybe the decision is to do mouse up in a totally different place. And even if it's touch fingers, you still have an event of pressed, drag started, and then drag ended. Or pressed and then stopped pressing. So the stop pressing should be the event that matters, but then I'm not sure how you present that to the user in graphical user interface mode. To audio QD, I'm sure when you whatever, when you lift your finger and at the exact position where you lift your finger, which might even mean seek back half a second. Or maybe you should filter out that noise. So that can happen if you playback is working, and while it's playing it back, you just click once on the button, don't do any scrolling. Should that scroll or not? Because the slider progresses while your mouse is pressed, which means that when you raise, it should seek back 1 second, which is not what the user intended. The user just clicked on here by accident. So there should be a seek threshold. Don't seek less than, I don't know, a second. And on automotive cars where you have just one automotive displays where you have maybe just one finger, why would you drag? You just put your finger on the seek bar wherever you want, and that's it. So just a touch. Maybe drag should be just disabled altogether. wow, show the complete source code of slider. And it didn't go to the GitHub mirror. It tried to fetch from Git the official Qt Git repository for QQC2. Let's stop it and disable drag and drop altogether. That's the best solution. But I'm not sure how you present that with to a user that has a mouse. So when the user presses, when they use on mouse down, left mouse button down inside the slider, what should happen if the user really intends to drag and drop? Yeah. Real human testers will be needed with, real human car drivers while they're actually driving the car. Yeah, it's trying to fix all sorts of issues that it encounters because it's not obvious how to do it without custom code. So the way to do it without custom code would be on mouse up, go there, on drag and go there. If mouse up doesn't always mean drag and. Yeah, it does all sorts of testing to respect my prompts and whatever I suggested. It's also trying to infer what is the spirit of what I said. The thing is that this most important part, what individual buttons do and what the GUI actually does, I have serialized that in plain text format in the most easily readable format possible, which is again one command in plain text in just one single file in just one single directory, which means that Cloud Code and the LLM knows exactly where to look for the serialization. And now it's actually finding all sorts of bugs in there by inspecting which files get created, how files get consumed. Of course, the tests that the LLM writes need to consume the files before the audio QD actually consumes the file. So it needs to close the audio QD, delete all of the command files, start the GUI, click around, and then decide if the files were created in the correct order, in the commands directory, with the correct content, etc. But it's a very important inspection tool that Claude and the LLM will actually use it a lot. In my advantage, because I have to type less, but then in their disadvantage, because they're going to find all sorts of issues once they guess what I really want out of the application. But having a single pipeline that's very easy to inspect is something that you should thrive. You should try to implement in your apps if your apps are as linear as this one. So it's linear because it's a GUI app and it waits for the user to click somewhere, and then we decide if that action of the user should do something because the user clicked on a button or in a white space, or if some timeout occurred or other validations that we do on the GUI. And then finally, we put a command on the single pipeline. But the pipeline is easily inspectable by everybody. You can have tests written in your source code, I don't know, XUnit style like tests. You can have Claude writing as it does all sorts of intermediate CPP files that it compiles that actually inspect the pipeline. You don't even need to expose very much the pipeline because Claude Code and the LLM will know that there's a pipeline there and they will expose it themselves by creating sample or temporary C++ source code, compiling it and running it. That's what you should want, and that's what a testable architecture wants, to have ways to inspect what's happening. I click here. Did the command get registered? Did the command traverse the IPC interprocess communication between the two processes? Should it have or not? So we had issues with the scroll bar. It sent seek commands more often than just on the left mouse button release. So in fact, what we really want is if the user clicks here and then releases only on left mouse button up, the seek command should be sent with the position in the scroll bar where the user has lifted the finger from the left mouse button. So click and so down and up only when up and only at this position should we seek. Down, move, so drag, and then release, drag up. Only on mouse up should send the seek position, and also the positions should be exactly the position of the mouse up. And then I said that the user, which is the car driver, needs to have it a bit more evident where to put the finger. So we made it evident by having the buttons on the bottom, because this where the car driver can find the buttons without actually looking at the screen, because the car driver can feel the physical buttons that exist on the bottom of the display, knows about where the display starts, where the display bottom is, and then clicks blindly without looking at the screen on the play button, because that's centered. But then we also put icons to make it more immediately evident which button what it does. And now we've also made them a bit more colorful. I asked for specific style, which is macOS 10.0, so the first aqua style, and I said water drop style instead of aqua style. Maybe that's why it doesn't look at all like macOS 10.0. But other than that, it's kind of passable. This part of the slider on the left of the knob, which says the amount of track time that has passed, is way more visible now, and that's superior to the previous solution, where the difference in contrast was smaller between the left hand side and the right hand side of the knob of the slider. So that's how it looks right now. It's okay to me. And then the buttons were okayish with these gradients. Let's look actually at the git commit, at the changes with the gradients. The changes are really limited. I expected at least, I know, 1,000 more source code lines, but it's more than, I know, around 150 new lines in here. So gradients with stop, gradient stop, and water drop shine with another rectangle that's actually a ellipsis. More gradients, more rectangles with the water drop. So when I said water, it guessed gradient plus water drop instead of thinking the aqua theme. Okay, and then I told it to center the labels both horizontally and vertically inside the bottom buttons. Let's look at the changes. Anchors field parent. Not just anchors center in parent. And there's a extra row. Okay, and that's it. This is the final version. This was me doing a tutorial about the Qt Framework 6, Qt QML, QC2, so Qt Quick Controls version 2, plus Qt Multimedia to build a simple audio player that's geared towards the Android in-car automotive experience. And the architecture of the application has started as being split into two different processes. One that just puts writes to the hardware of the audio card, and one with the rest of the app. We ended up reading the list of files in the music directory. The music directory currently is not selectable. We know audio formats that are supported by Qt Multimedia, such as MP3. In my case, I'm on Linux Ubuntu 2604, and Qt Multimedia uses FFmpeg as backend, including the patent encumbered formats such as MP3, if MP3 is still patent encumbered in the US and other countries. We ended up reading the metadata from IDTD tags for authors and title to display it as track display title. If we cannot extract such information, if there's zero IDT tags, for instance, we display the file name. We have a seek bar that actually works. We have a play button pause that works. We have next track and previous track. This is it. Thank you. PS, the LLM large language model that I have used is platform.deepseek.com, and the total cost for what you saw in this tutorial comes down to 61 cents, dollar cents, the default model, the Flash one, and there were tens of millions of tokens needed because I have left the Claude Code in auto mode at least 2 times.